Once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Nguyen. Currently, I am a sophomore. I'm 16 at Carnegie Vanguard High School in Houston, Texas, here in the United States. And I think that events like this presented by EnviroCast, I believe this is the first time we've had this conference, reminds us of something very important, that education in general is about responsibility, and we've seen this through multiple speakers in previous times, and things like that over the past sessions that we've had. And I think that it's just truly an honor to be here. And I am currently a United Nations youth delegate, and my initiative is called TruthinTech. So the purpose of today's talk will be the transparency mandate, rebuilding that public trust that I believe has been so fragmented. With the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, things like that, in an era of such rapid innovation. And just once again, thank you very much, everybody. And I think, I'll start by talking just a little bit more about myself and my background so you guys have an idea. Um, as I stated, last year I was selected as a youth delegate for the United Nations General Assembly, their 80th anniversary in New York City in 2025. I am concurrently also the founder of a youth civic engagement initiative called Let's Go Vote, also a nonprofit. And essentially, our goal is to enhance civic literacy, make it easier for first-time voters and voters, constrained by language barriers, make all those processes easier. In general, my work has focused on the intersection of law and public policy. I've been a legal intern at many local firms in Houston, and I'm a member of Carnegie's Quiz Bowl debate and World Quest teams. I'm also currently conducting research on refugee migration. And I was also a recipient of the Benjamin Donald Hatfield Scholarship for Speech and Debate. My partner was actually Arnav, as you can see on the right. And, I've been acting in theater, and I'm also a nationally ranked quiz bowl player. Since middle school and early elementary school, I've had such a great passion for, finding out how these emerging technologies kind of interact with legal systems, legal frameworks, things like that. How can we make those better and more efficient in order to better serve our communities and our society in America and in the world in general? So I'll just present to you the problem that I've been doing research for the past 1 or 2 years on. Is today we see that AI is advancing extremely rapidly, and at a much faster rate than which legislation from both local and national governments can keep up with. And in many countries, it's clear that AI is already used for things such as policing. Right, we have surveillance in public spaces, monitoring online speech. As we see here, many are concerned that it's being used as a tool for mass surveillance and censorship. Among other kinds of ethical and issues relating to privacy. And I think that is especially pertinent in today's world because if it is to remain unaddressed, they can silence dissent, and AI can be negatively used in a negative means to suppress democratic opinions and erode the values of democracy that we strive to uphold wherever we are in the world, and especially here, the bedrock, the foundation of democracy, the United States. And we've seen that it's actually become much more urgent as AI develops, as I said earlier just now, extremely rapidly. And for instance, if you look on this slide, the 2024 survey conducted by the Center for Youth and AI in conjunction with the organization YouGov showed that 80% of US teenagers believe that lawmakers should address the dangers of AI through legislation. And what is striking, if you'll bear with me for a second, is that they ranked it even above climate change and economic inequality. That just goes to show just how vital the issue is right now. And according to Statista, by mid 2025, only about 43% of countries actually believe that their current AI regulations and laws were adequate in the current form. And so, that once again demonstrates that there is for sure a need to, kind of enhance these systems and ensure that there is proper oversight across all sectors, cross collaboration. And finally, if you'll look on the chart on the right, skepticism according to Stanford's 2025 AI Index report, in which public concern has grown tremendously. Many respondents, if you look, report that their trust in AI to be, number one, fair and free from discrimination. Any form of bias is greatly decreasing. We've seen that, especially in large language models such as, there's multiple of them, six, maybe, seven or more, with these Claude, Anthropic, Graph, things like that. We've seen that there's, so much of a potential for, if these technologies land in the wrong hands, for instance, or if they are used to silence dissent, there's a great potential for there to be bias. And so, we can see that this urgency just goes to show us that there is a need for urgent and immediate action to be taken. And so I'd like to introduce to you all, what exactly Truth in Tech really is. And so Truth in Tech is a youth-led initiative dedicated to ensuring that both AI and digital infrastructure do the following. These are our primary goals. It is to strengthen democracy, to protect civil liberties, and to operate with transparency and accountability. And our primary goal is to make sure that we approach AI as a civic issue, a legal issue, and an educational issue in order to make youth participation something that is at the forefront to prevent, both government and corporate outreach as well as censorship. We believe that with these large companies that are responsible primarily for the development of these AI systems, they hold significant power over how they are regulated, and so we feel that Truth in Tech needs to exist to kind of ensure that youth have a voice whenever they have concerns or things like that. They can raise them. Their concerns are heeded and they are listened to. And I feel like, for instance, if we look at the EnviroCast platform, it's something where, truly revolutionary, where we have for the first time an environmental intelligence platform that, can demonstrate, the ideas of youth, who are environmentally minded, such as, Kaveen and Arnab. And that's the kind of thing that Truth in Tech wants to support and see. So I'll go just briefly into our transparent framework. You'll just give me 1 second here. Yeah, so our acronym is transparent. Here on the slideshow, we can just see there's just a few of our most important goals that we see, which is transparency, obviously, the degree to which processes and decisions are both open and visible to the public to allow communities and stakeholders to understand just how AI systems operate and how data is used. And the first T in the transparent framework is truth. We want to promote integrity, to educate youth on how these algorithms are both trained and deployed. The second one is R, representation. Most importantly, we believe that ensuring that both youth and marginalized communities actually have the capacity to access these technologies in a way that it is very inclusive. And part of that is a novel idea that Truth in Tech wants to incorporate is having discussions about AI governance, advisory boards at both the local and national levels. And we feel that that is a crucial step in making sure that youth voices are heard every step of the way. So we have T, R, and next is A, access, to develop a mechanism where access to these tools are provided on an equitable and inclusive basis. And next we have networks, building that multi-stakeholder community that includes politicians, our legislators, our teachers, and our youth, especially our youth, everyone, because they are the generation most impacted by the advent of these technologies. And the ideal here is to make sure that they are mission aligned to bring together the resources needed to amplify youth voices and make sure that they are not, left by the wayside, per se. Next, so we have TRAN, and then is S, safeguards. So we think that encouraging safeguards to be formed through governance, through legislation, so that there actually is, regulation, and most importantly, ensuring that civil liberties and the foundation of democracy is protected in AI development. And the next is P, precision. We want to create these detailed, structure-oriented pathways that focus on interventions from early on. We don't want it to get to the level where AI is effectively used as a form of mass surveillance and censorship, as it is in many authoritarian regimes around the world. We want to try to curtail that as much as possible. That requires, as I said earlier, working with stakeholders, people on the ground, seeing what the situation actually is so we can take action as soon as possible to address these pressing issues. Next is accountability. We want to push for these oversight mechanisms to hold, once again, governments and corporations accountable for any potential misuse and abuse of AI technologies. But once again, we want to work together with them as well. We want to be resilient, R, ensuring that there are governance models that will contribute to long-term democratic stability. Because I think that with truth in tech, it is truly, something that's obsolete, and it becomes, not very useful if in the long term there are events that occur, maybe potentially changes in government, but truth in tech cannot, withstand its mission that it was originally created to. We want to make sure that there is that resilience, equity. We want to make sure that all communities have equal access, and that bias that I mentioned earlier is eliminated as much as possible. 100% will maybe not ever be, possible, but we want to make sure that bias is eliminated as much as possible through, algorithms and deployments, and, innovation and trust. We kind of combine these, but, just to reiterate, there will always be in the future, in the coming years, an immense amount of innovation to come through these AI companies and things like that, through the most fantastic engineers here we have globally and in the United States as well. But we believe that innovation must be coupled with an ethical approach that maintains the public trust. Because without the public trust, innovation may occur, but it will advance nowhere, and it would do nothing to advance our society in general. And that is the core of what Truth in Tech aims to harness, is that ethical approach that will allow us to balance innovation with a sense of the public trust. So just to give everyone, a brief idea of what the transparent framework is, I don't want to go on too long about it, but essentially that is what it was. Additionally, just to give you a brief idea of the roadmap, in 2024 is when I first, 2 years ago, identified the gap that I saw between the advancement of AI. And, back then I was an eighth grader just heading into my freshman year. And so, we saw that there are so many different technologies that are simply not regulated. And, may I remind you, to this day, President Trump's administration, President Biden's administration, they've tried push for legislation, but Congress still has not passed a single federal comprehensive legislation for AI. And so therefore, all these companies and all these technologies, it still remains something that is kind of left in the open, right? And that's when I began research into AI governance and these digital rights. How can we use it to protect democracy, to protect civil liberties? Last year was when I formally founded the organization Truth in Tech, and when I was invited to the UN General Assembly as a youth delegate. This year, 2026, we see this as, kind of a vital stepping stone, because we were able to expand through global presentations such as, EnviroCast, Geo. We have many other such presentations set up, and I will be sure to keep everyone updated on that. But building that network of industry professionals and youth leaders. And we also want to launch a form of structured programming, such as through digital content, social media outreach, and all of that is kind of in the works right now to engage a wider audience as much as possible, expand this outreach. And you'll hear about our goals in a bit. And I believe, so currently I'm a sophomore. By my junior year, my senior year, personally, my goal is I want to see the transparent framework scaled regionally into a global platform that has, applications that can be, sustained and adapted, that can be molded based on the individual needs of every situation, every region, every country. That will be, I believe, the true indicator of success, to turn this into a policy reality, to work in conjunction with local, state, and national governments. And, just once again, a more holistic view, by the end of 2027, over the next few years, we want to engage over 500 youth in 35 plus countries, and through the transparent framework, successfully enact over 10 community-driven solutions. And we absolutely invite all stakeholders to join us in creating this future where we're able to empower our youth, and we're able to empower our citizens to strengthen democracy and not weaken it. And I think I'll kind of close off with this, because, just as many other students, I simply took an interest and I conducted research and, made a project, and was fortunate enough to bring this to a scale of national and global attention. But to youth, I invite you, all students, no matter whether you may be in middle school or high school, even college students, please take an active role in shaping this future of technology through developing a thorough understanding of AI and digital rights. And, I would for sure urge everybody to examine how AI affects your daily access to information, how it affects your daily life, things like that. Civic participation as well. Obviously this talk is not about let's go vote, but AI is an important part of that as well. We want to make sure that all of these systems are streamlined and protect our citizens as much as possible. And so you are the leaders of the future. I can't think of any other way best to put it, and that is what my team and I ask of you. And just closely examine and speak up if there's something that, through advisory boards, and that's the kind of thing that Truth and Tech wants to enact, to schools and various other educational organizations. We believe that at Truth and Tech, the ethical implications of AI must be integrated into the curriculum because it is something that is pertinent and, pressing, not to diminish the importance of other topics, of course, but through these learning frameworks, through these programs, we urge you to combine that, integrate that as much as possible into the learning of students, because that framework, that foundation will be vital for when they become, the leaders of the future of, these nations, and to become legislators themselves, so that they can engage effectively and, with these digital technologies. And just one quick thing I want to emphasize is that Truth and Tech's goal is not to turn everybody into an engineer, right? It would be it would be kind of futile to do that. And we know that everybody has their own niche and their own thing that they're good at, but we want to make sure that everybody is informed, and that is why to foundations, we would greatly appreciate your assistance and philanthropic partners to support this work through grants and prizes and all these policy forums. Any assistance that can be provided to Truth and Tech is for sure greatly appreciated. And yeah, so that is, I believe, conclusion for me. End of the presentation. Want to just thank you everyone so much for your time. And just like at EnviroCast, I see Truth and Tech as a movement, and we want to bring together as many youth, want to bring together as many leaders as possible in the coming months, in the coming years, right? And this is something that will continue for a very long time as these AI technologies continue to develop. We urge you to take a stand and, with Truth and Tech, develop with us as well. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to open it up to, I believe they had some Q&A now, but yes, thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you, Long. I think that was a wonderful talk. It goes back to what we said in the introduction about not just what you build, but why you build it. And I think Truth and Tech has that mission. Furthermore, I think there's like around 6 to 7 AI models that are prominent in today's world. And I don't think like any of them are very heavily regulated. So I think Truth and Tech can go and help that as well. But let's transition to the questions right now. So I'll let Kaveen hand it off.
For sure. That was very inspirational, and you've been engaging the chat quite a lot. So, first, we have a question from, I think I'll just say Maltier. Between government, private corporations, institutions, etc., where is the biggest transparency gap?
Right. Yeah. So, Mutir, thank you so much for the question. I think it's a great question. And in terms of the biggest transparency gap, I think it is probably we'd have to look at private corporations, right? Because they are responsible, of course, for. We could look at Meta. You look at platforms such as Instagram, which is incorporated, of course, Meta AI, right? And as I mentioned earlier, Anthropic with Claude and Grok, things like that. These are the kinds of companies that are responsible for the development. But a lot of times there is bias, and I'm sure we've seen all of these scandals with Grok, for instance, recently. And I think that there needs to be utmost transparency there. And there needs to be collaboration, I think, with the youth sector and with the government, because only through there will there be that capacity to enact legislation that will be regulatory, but not to stifle, innovation. And so to answer your question, I think it's, private corporations that really need to, kind of step it up. And, I think youth play probably one of the most significant roles in that, because it is youth who engage with these systems on a daily basis, right? Sometimes more than even professionals in offices or things like that. They're the ones using it daily. And, I think that there needs to be greater kind of oversight on their part. But once again, we want to emphasize this is something that we encourage transparency because we think that it is vital to fostering an environment where we have greater collaboration, we have greater regulation, and it protects democracy, civil liberties for all. And I think that if we're able to accomplish that, both Truth and Tech's goal and the broader goal for the good of society, will be significantly improved. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, so next I think we have a question from Stephen Navarro. He's asking, you mentioned the UNGA and being a youth delegate. What surprised you most about how tech policy is actually shaped in the real world / in government / legislation?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Stephen. And it's just to recap. It was truly a fantastic experience. Being at UNGA, and I went to various other conferences, such as, for instance, the Cornell and Deloitte Climate Weeks, in which we saw that there are lots of things such as like industry professionals, and we had reporters actually on a debate stage, and they were discussing about the implications, environmental implications, and I know this is particularly significant to EnviroCast, and I think that to answer your question, them having that debate, on that stage and discussing, how is it best, the positive implications, negative implications of AI, because everybody recognizes that it has a tremendous potential. And I believe, particularly regarding agentic artificial intelligence, which was one of the senior VPs of one of the leading climate companies that integrates AI. They were discussing that, and I think what surprised me most about it was just how kind of integrated everything is, and how the importance of it is like truly recognized, that it has a potential to make such limits, and that we have those kinds of platforms to really have that debate. And I think that I never really expected that. I expected kind of speakers to come up and give their opinion on it, but to have that kind of openness, I think that may be the first step in making sure that there's more effective legislation, open debate, and making sure that everyone's opinions are heard, especially youth.
Yeah, great response. So, Kavin.
Next up, we have, I think, a follow-up from Stephen. You also mentioned your background, but what led you to this interest in delving into ethics, legislation, law, and governance?
Yes. I think just from the time where I was like about like 5, 6 years old, I've always been very interested in history. I'm Vietnamese, so about the history of Vietnam, the history of the entire world, and I think in terms of legislation, that's when I particularly got interested in voting, which led me to found Let's Go Vote a few years ago. And I think that just like how in voting, if we do not have a say, whatever community we are in, through the ballot box, somebody else will make those decisions for us. And if youth similarly do not have the voice in terms of AI legislation to, heed those concerns in terms of bias, algorithmic bias, and various other forms of discrimination, somebody else will make those decisions. And youth themselves are the generation most impacted by those changes. And that is what, kind of let me, parallel, because I think law has a lot of intersections with emerging technologies, and truly diving deep into those and seeing, how it is that we can utilize it and kind of manipulate it to better enhance our society and our laws, and make sure that we live in a stable democracy, is I think something that is of the utmost importance.
Yeah, so I think Multier has another question. Kavin, if you could just pin it. So Multier is asking, in terms of in the future, like in 10 years' time, what do you think a trustworthy AI ecosystem will look like?
Yeah, great question. So I think, like I stated earlier, with our goal is to reach over 35 plus countries, and right now we are kind of active in towards South Asia and Europe. Just engaged with in the previous conference I did in January for the Learning Planet Festival. We were able to reach hundreds of spectators throughout Europe, throughout Asia, and it was a great kind of online event. And I think having a trustworthy AI ecosystem will for sure require partners on the ground, because we can discuss with local national governments, as I stated, but the question then remains, is that how will we actually know that we're causing some change, instead of just sitting here talking about it, but then on the ground things are not changing? Is that we will need to have deep ties, deep connections to both youth and industry professionals on the ground, sitting here there and telling us, hey, I'm seeing that there's an issue here. It needs to be, resolved. Can you discuss this with them? I think if we're able to build that network, again, the networks, I think possibly one of the most important parts of stakeholders, that community will allow us to, significantly improve our ecosystem, and, make sure that we are actually achieving our aims. And I think in 10 years' time is for sure something that we want to be able to have.
Yeah, I think that we also would like to foster that sense here at EnviroCast. But I think Ethan Hatif has another question for.
So Ethan's saying, which step of the transparent framework is hardest to implement or has challenge associated with it?
Yeah, thank you, Ethan. I think probably the part regarding accessibility, because one of the core ideals that that we stated at TruthinTech is to make sure that all these marginalized communities, all of these youth in it could be less developed countries, it could be even in economic situations where they're not able to do that, right? And sometimes working with those governments can I'll be frank with you, quite difficult. And we want to for sure still make sure that there's a great potential for these youth to engage with these AI systems and make sure that they're able to kind of understand how to use it, what are the dangers associated with it, how can it benefit them, how can it benefit their country in general. And I think maybe that outreach would be the most difficult part, but having in mind the importance of it is, I think, probably one of the core ideals that will propel Truth and Tech to be able to kind of enact these policies. But I think for sure there might be challenges with it.
Yeah, so I think Ethan
Perfect.
Hatif has
Yeah.
another follow-up. So
Okay.
Naveen, if you could get to it.
So a follow-up from Ethan. Another question I have, what skills should I think young people start to develop today to shape the future tomorrow in terms of ethics, technology, artificial intelligence, governance, law, policy, etc.?
For sure. Yeah. Again, as I said in my final slide regarding the ask, we for sure want to encourage young people as much as possible to be involved in their communities. And, stemming from my interest in legislation and voting, things like that, it derived from a concern that I had in my community that people in my own family wanted to participate in the elections, in the democratic process. But the systems put in place were simply too difficult for them to understand. And I think just as, in that, to be able to have a voice, to be able to have transparency, there needs to be streamlined processes. And I think Truth and Tech is the culmination of Let's Go Vote and my other ambitions to be able to see how young people can shape the future for tomorrow. And I think it just starts from the ability to be involved in your community, whatever concerns that you have. I urge you to bring it up in local school board meetings, or bring it up to your local representative or your local politicians, things like that, because if nobody speaks up, somebody else will make those decisions for you. And if that's not something that you want to happen, I would strongly encourage all youth to pursue those avenues, because that will be kind of the catalyst for something that I did, for instance, where I saw an issue and really took action on that, did research, and that's how we got to that conclusion. So that would be my advice to youth. Great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so before we end it off, there's one more question from Stephen Navarro right here. And Stephen is asking once again, if you could give one piece of advice to young people or those who don't feel like they could do anything, what would that be?
Yeah. I think yeah, thank you, Stephen. But I think in terms of not feeling like you can do anything is certainly something that many youth feel. They feel like just kind of like a drop in the bucket. For instance, you can't do very much because what kind of power do you really have? But that is what Truth and Tech really advocates for you to do, for you to have that voice. I speak to community leaders, parents, trusted adults, teachers, write emails to local politicians, to your representatives. I can almost guarantee you they will be very responsive to your concerns if you know what you're talking about, if you're doing appropriate research, and you demonstrate that you are absolutely knowledgeable in that field. You will be treated like an adult. You will be taken very seriously, and I think that will kind of resolve that issue of powerlessness, because if you are confident in your capabilities, that will reflect in your interactions with people who you may think may have more power than you. And I think I can tell you the outcome may be a lot more different than you expect. So I would just urge you to be mindful, be very interactive, and of course be respectful whoever you interact with, but just make sure that you are confident in what you are discussing. And I think that will truly capture people's attention and make your voice something that is truly heeded in your concerns.
Oh, yeah. One last question from Bob before we close it. What direction do you want to go in?
Yeah, not sure if Bob's referring to career or in terms of Truth and Tech, but I'll kind of answer both. In terms of Truth and Tech, like we stated, we want to be able to expand our operations internationally to other countries, reach 500 or more youth through social media outreach, and things like that. I think we've already kind of gotten well along our way here with these kinds of international conferences, presentations, both local forums and in-person forums. And I think interacting with the community is one of the best ways to do that, right? And
Yeah.
in terms of my personal career, I would like to go into the legal field, probably corporate law, and if the opportunity arises, serve my community, my country, my state, even in the political system, in the democratic system, and just kind of again making those policy dreams, those policy ambitions a reality.
Yeah, thank you, Long. So I think the work that you're doing at Truth in Tech is really going to pave a way for a better future for not just like technology companies, but for the human species overall, with the increased transparency in tech and the ability for people to actually see where their information is going and how it can be best used to serve and help their purposes. So once again, thank you, and good day to you.
For sure. Thank you so much, EnviroCast. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
There is always an opportunity to contribute to the discussions that we have at EnviroCast Geo. If you are interested in attending or even speaking at a future conference, learn more at geo.envirocast.org. We're excited to hear your insights.